start of the year. Forget January. Autumn is when the real magic happens. There's just this perfect new energy for sitting down, getting cozy, reflecting on the past year, and creating some new goals. So today in this video, I'm going to walk you through my strategy, what I do every fall to kind of reset and set goals for my writing. I'm going to focus specifically on creative writing and my strategy for that. I might make a video later on, closer to January, for creating goals for my career in general, but this is just for creative writing. I do this sort of overall year ahead vision during the fall, but I also check in every 6 months, so I'll do kind of a little mini version of this in April as well. And if you like to stick with doing this in January, that's totally fine. This works anytime that you want to do it. First, I like to take some time to reflect. It is nice to just sit down and maybe list out a few things that went well, that I accomplished in the past year, and some lessons that I've learned. After I've spent some time with that, realistically, I personally spend about 15 minutes to half an hour on the reflection portion of things. I then like to lay down and do a visualization, sort of like a guided meditation. There are free ones that you can Google online. I use one in the Superhuman app that I really like, or that's what I've been using lately anyway. In the past, I have done the free ones that I've just looked for on YouTube. I'll share some links below. The whole purpose behind this is to spend some time actually visualizing, not just listing out what I want to do and accomplish in the next year, specific to my creative writing goals. These visualizations help you think about questions like, who do I want to be? And what kinds of things do I want to do related to my writing to get there? What do I have currently to work with? What don't I have that I work towards obtaining? After I've done the visualization portion, I like to sit down and actually write down on a piece of paper. I personally just use a legal notepad like this. I write down answers to the following questions. Why do I write? What is my why and motivation for why I want to write? And then what do I want to create with my writing within the next year? Because there are a lot of avenues that you can go down as a writer. Do I want to write more essays or short stories and submit those to journals and online magazines? Do I want to work on actually writing a book this year? Do I want to write poems and share them online? Do I want to build more of an online presence? Do I want to start a YouTube channel? Just think about specifically what you want to create in the next year. And I advise, for me personally, it works best to just choose one thing to focus on predominantly. Sometimes I set other little goals, but that is the thing that will be the priority for the next year. And this is something that maybe not everyone will love. Sometimes it gets some pushback, but I do like to think about who I'm writing for, who is my audience, what kinds of things will they find valuable and helpful? As artists, sometimes we like to think about creating for ourselves first, and I do think that that's important, especially in the early stages, but it's also important to think about your work within a larger context and who might be relating to it and consuming it, and build that into your sense of purpose and process. Like I said, I like to choose one overarching big thing that I want to create to focus on. Last year for me, that was finishing my first draft finally. I did a few other things over the last year, and like I said, you can do a few other small things, but at the end of the day, on a day-to-day basis, as I'm working towards this larger goal, it's the thing that will take precedence over the other smaller things if there's not enough time. And that's the reason for that. I also like to spend some time and choose a word for the year. Last year it was intention. This is something that sometimes comes out of that visualization practice that I do. Sometimes I do have to spend a little more time reflecting and thinking about that. And there's actually a strategy for choosing a word for the year that I use that I will also link in the description below if you want to move through a process that's a little more structured. It's not mine, so I will link you to the creator that made that, the one that I like to use. Now that you've chosen your big overarching goal for the year for your writing projects and in terms of what you want to create, and maybe a few smaller ones, I think it's really important to create a tracking system for yourself. I don't know about you, but for me personally, if I don't write things down and create a system to support my goals, it doesn't get done. There are a lot of tracking tools you can use, like Trello or Notion. For me personally, I like an old-fashioned planner. Every year I get the Golden Coil. They let you design your own planner, so you can choose everything from the cover down to what is on the pages inside and how they're structured, which I really like. It's a bit of an investment, but I think it's really nice to be able to every day go in and write down what I'm working on and what I'm doing. Beyond that, I also, for my writing projects specifically, just use good old-fashioned Excel. A lot of people hate Excel, but it works for me. I create spreadsheets that help me track where my due dates are for certain things and links to pages that I'm working on. This was incredibly helpful, especially for finishing my first draft. It helped me break down the entire project into smaller steps and keep track of everything in one place. After I've chosen a larger goal, I work backwards. So I start with the end goal, and then I start to look at how I can break that down into smaller steps. I'm going to use the example of writing a book since that's what I did last year. I looked at how much time I could commit monthly, what days were going to be best to work on in line with my 9-to-5 job as a tech content strategist. Most days I allotted about an hour that I could give, and I blocked out certain days of the month that I knew I wouldn't be able to get any work done in advance. This also makes it flexible so that you can adjust on a weekly basis, but it gives you a high-level view at a monthly level and then breaks down into weeks and days. I actually put that into my planner as a monthly schedule, and then month by month go in and allocate the time weekly and daily. But I'm not doing it all in bulk upfront, planning my year without knowing what's going to be coming or happening. I just create a general plan for the year, then each month, and then on a monthly basis, I go in and break that down further. At the same time that I do that in my planner, I do that in my Excel spreadsheet for the project and create due dates for myself, just a rough estimate. I do end up going in and adjusting that as life happens, but just to give myself an overall idea of where my benchmarks are and the time period that I have to get certain things done. I think that's a really important thing behind all of this too, is just to know you can adjust things. But if you never make a plan in the beginning, it likely won't happen. That's how it is for me anyway. I create a plan, but leave some flexibility to go in and adjust as needed, just so that I can keep it realistic. Having a form of accountability, like a process to support your goal, can also be really helpful for me, especially for this book project. It was a game changer. I scheduled time with a developmental editor to send my entire project to them for an edit. Having that due date in mind, again, tied into that process of working backwards, having a larger goal, giving myself a due date, and I was accountable to somebody because I was also paying them, and there were fees associated with not hitting that date on time. And maybe your accountability doesn't have to be so extreme. Writing groups, writing even with another friend and exchanging pages has worked really well for me. Sometimes I've worked in the past when I've just been submitting essays and things on my own deadlines, but having those in that Excel spreadsheet and in my planner worked as a sense of accountability for me. Just give yourself timelines and structure, and if it helps you, incorporate another person. Even if it's just telling a friend that you write with, hey, I'm gonna send you X number of pages on this date just to hold myself accountable. That can be a helpful motivator. When I just leave it to myself, I will just keep pushing it off and never do it if I don't have some sort of solid deadline or person expecting something from me. In line with this idea I have about keeping things somewhat flexible yet still creating a plan is being realistic about the metrics and benchmarks that you're hitting. If something big happens and you have to delay the timeline that you set for yourself, do that. Our entire lives can't be planned out in a really regimented, structured way all the time. So leave room to know if one day you miss your writing time, you can do it the next. The end goal will happen over time if you are devoting some time to it. If you have to set your deadline back by a few weeks or a few months even. That's okay. As long as you're working towards it the best that you can, it will eventually get done. And I think that that's the most important thing. Sometimes when we set these big goals, it can be really easy to be hard on ourselves if we don't stick to a very structured, regimented schedule all the time. But that's kind of a hindrance to reaching our goals too, because that demotivates us sometimes from working on them. So be gentle and kind to yourself. If you need to restructure things or change your goals at a certain point or deadlines, always do that. So that's my process. And like I said, I don't know quite yet what mine are going to be. I do this every year on my birthday, actually. So I'll be doing it at the end of the week. And I do know that after focusing on writing my first draft this year, some of my goals will include continuing to send that book out on submission, maybe doing some more revision. I'm going to think about that. I would also like to write more essays and pitch those, and maybe even experiment with writing short stories. So those are some things kind of on my mind. We'll see what happens. I'll do a little recap and share with you guys what I land on in another video. Comment below and let me know. Maybe I'll make a video about my career goal setting process that I do in January. That looks a little different. I do that as well. I also do, as I said, like a 6-month check-in. So maybe I'll do another video about that if that's of interest. It's all just a process and something that can evolve over time. It can be nice to devote some time early in the year to create an overarching vision to work from. I hope that you found this helpful. If you did, drop a comment, like, subscribe, follow along for more, and let me know if you have other topics that you want me to talk about in these videos or questions that came out of this. Happy to answer those. I hope you all are enjoying these few months leading up into the holiday season. Until next time.